Hi everyone, Flaming Footy here and welcome back to another YouTube video on the channel. And today guys, we are going to be doing our AFL 2022 round preview. Yes, another big round preview for another massive round of footy. And I will tell you, this round along with round 23 are two massive rounds where we're going to be learning more about the teams contending for the top 4 and top 8. And I think this round will really be able to tell us some teams that can't make finals that can. So I think that we have some really big games coming up before a blockbuster round 23, which I will hopefully have a little look at the end of this video. But the round 22 preview, here we go. Lots of big games this round. But before we go ahead and start round 22, going to go back, have a look at the round that was round 21 last round. The Pies got over the Demons by 7 points. The Hawks got over the Suns by 7 points. The Giants got over the Bombers by 27 points. The Doggies lost to the Dockers by 17 points. The Cats smashed the Saints by 45 points. The Power lost to the Tigers by 38 points. North Melbourne lost to Sydney by 38 points. Brisbane defeated Carlton by 33 points. And West Coast lost to Adelaide by 16 points. So it is a massive round of footy coming up in round 22. So let's go ahead and start the round 22 AFL preview. Alright, so massive round of footy coming up, as we all know. Some massive games, and it all starts off with a massive Friday night game between St Kilda versus Brisbane at Marvel Stadium. Now, St Kilda, they're getting 2 games on the trot at Marvel Stadium against Brisbane and Sydney, 2 sides contending for the top 4 and 2 top 4 quality sides that have been up and about in finals for a little bit. Sydney were in finals last year and Brisbane were in finals last year. So it's going to be two pretty tough outfits that they're going to have to go up against if they want to make the 8 for St Kilda, which is getting very unlikely. Even though they're at Marvel, but still, just the quality of the Saints compared to the quality of the Lions and the Swans, it's really going to be a tough run home for St Kilda, and I think if they were to get into the 8, that'd be quite shocking, and their percentage as well is quite poor, so even if it was to come down to percentage with Carlton, it'll be Carlton that will make the 8 anyway, or the Western Bulldogs would be the Doggies, so their percentage is, again, even if they're going to try, another thing that will let them down anyway, because I don't think they'll be able to win the last 2 games. Might be able to get one, but I highly doubt they'll win both 2, and I highly doubt they'll win any of their last 2 games. Brisbane, they've been off some shaky last quarter form, so if this game is close at 3-quarter time, Brisbane could choke. That is something that could definitely happen. So they need to look at their last quarters, and they need to not give up in last quarters, because that has almost cost them. It cost them against Richmond. It almost cost them against Carlton. And could it cost them against the Saints? Who knows? My tip is Brisbane by 18 points, so I'm pretty confident in the Lions that they will win. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit closer than what some people have thought. The Western Bulldogs versus the Giants is the first game on Saturday. And this is really big for the Western Bulldogs. Need to win this game. If they're any hope of making the top 8, they need to win both their last 2 games. Have the Giants and the Hawks coming up. And the Doggies were disappointing against the Dockers. They really didn't show any fight whatsoever. They were always down by about 20 points, and the final margin was by 17 in favour of the Dockers. So poor performance by them last week, and the Giants got back on the winners list, beating Essendon, who have been really good in the past few weeks. So that was a really good win for the Giants, showing that they can still win games of footy, and putting themselves back on the winners list is something they'll be very proud of. But at Marvel Stadium, it is a ground that you'd be thinking the Giants won't do too well at, and it is the Western Bulldogs' home ground, and they play the ground very well. Remember back to round 19, they did beat the Demons at this ground, which can be some sort of a little bit of evidence as to why they will be tipped, and I have tipped them in this game. I've tipped them by 41 points to win. I think some people think it's going to be closer, but no, I think this is going to be an easy win for the Western Bulldogs. I think the Giants will just be pretty poor after a good showing last week, but I think they'll be back down to pretty poorness, and I think the Western Bulldogs will be able to easily walk over the Giants because their finals hopes are coming down to this, and I think they'll have the determination there to win the game. Adelaide versus North Melbourne is the second game on the Saturday afternoon, 1:40 Adelaide time. But yeah, I think this game, North Melbourne were improving last week, but it was all due to Nick Larkey, who kicked 7 goals, and other than that, they would have only had 6 on the board had he not kicked 7. So that is still a little bit of a problem. Larkey and Zerha are their main avenues. So if you were to put both of them out in a game, I think North Melbourne would have really no avenues to score. But it is at the Adelaide Oval, which is going to make this game a whole heap harder for North Melbourne. They don't play there very well, and I doubt there'll be much of a chance. Yes, there was improvement signs last week, but again, all off the back of Nick Larkey, and I don't think I don't think they'll be very good in this game. And Adelaide, well, talk about them in the past few weeks. They've been fantastic. They beat Carlton. And they beat West Coast. They beat Carlton at the Adelaide Oval and they beat West Coast at Optus Stadium. 2 very solid wins. And in round 22 and 23, they can easily go 4 in a row to finish off the year, which would be scenes for the Adelaide Crows. Now, again, this is one that they'll comfortably win. I've tipped the Crows. I think I tipped them by, it was 47, I think. I think it was by about, I think it was 37. I think it was 37 that I tipped them by in the end. I'll have to check that one, though. Yes, so I did tip the Crows by 37. I think they'll comfortably beat North Melbourne. Now to the Saturday twilight game between Gold Coast and Geelong. Now this is definitely Geelong's hardest part in their not-so-hard run home. Beating the Suns at Metricon Stadium is definitely a very doable task for Geelong. But it is also a doable task for Gold Coast to knock off Geelong. Now, I think, let's just have a little look at the Cats. Now, their last 12 or so weeks have been fantastic. They're on a 12-game winning streak. And, they'll be minor premiers for sure this year. And we'll be having a very good crack at the premiership with Geelong. Now, Gold Coast last week were very disappointing against Hawthorn. They had chances to win the game as they put it down to themselves. 8-15 will not win you a game of footy. They were so close. They ended up losing by 7 and they had multiple chances. They kicked 1 goal 5 in the last quarter, which is quite a poor goal-kicking accuracy. So you can't say they didn't have their chances because they most certainly did have their chances and they lost the game off their own foot or off their own boots. The Cats, though, they've been very impressive the whole year, so it's hard to not tip them now. I think they're going to win. They're just going to keep on winning. They're going to win 12 in a row because they've won 11 in a row just like Collingwood. And I think the Cats will win by 21 points. They'll get the job done in a really nice manner. Now to the first of 2 Saturday night games, Melbourne versus Carlton at the MCG. Now it may loom to be a boring game, but it is big in the way things will end up shaping. Melbourne versus Carlton. Now Melbourne's run home and Carlton's run home have both been incredibly tough and will still be challenging to come in round 23. So both teams here will be looking for a win, and I think there will be one side that will win it. But anyway, we'll go have a look at the teams in the past week or so. Melbourne last week versus who was it last week? It would have been, let me check. Last week versus Collingwood, they ended up letting the game slip from where they had control and were smashing Collingwood in inside 50. So they did end up letting that game slip, did Melbourne. But again, they're still a good side. And Carlton, well, they've just been poor in the past few weeks and haven't yet booked away a final spot. And have been extremely disappointing in their past couple of games against Brisbane and Adelaide. They had 4 goals to 3/4 time against Brisbane, which is quite poor for a side of their calibre. They've got a really strong side to Carlton, but yeah, they just haven't been good in the past few weeks. I think Melbourne will comfortably win this game by 28 points. Second Saturday night game is the Perth Derby between Fremantle versus West Coast at Optus Stadium. Now, West Coast last week versus Adelaide were disappointing in Josh Kennedy's farewell game. Now, he did kick 8 goals to Josh Kennedy, which is really nice to see that the legend was sent off in a really nice way. But unfortunately enough, they couldn't get the win for him. They still played pretty well, and they did have control over a couple of quarters in that game versus Adelaide. But just sometimes didn't hit the scoreboard, and Fremantle were very good. They bounced back to their best in their home away from home at Marvel Stadium against the Western Bulldogs. So, again, this was a pretty easy game to tip. Fremantle for me, and I think they'll win it comfortably by 41 points in a big win to keep their top 4 hopes alive. Now to the first game on Sunday, Richmond versus Hawthorn at the MCG. Now Richmond, if they win this game and Carlton lose, they can jump skip Carlton into 7th spot, which I think will end up happening, and I think they'll end up finishing there at the end of the season. But Hawthorn, they have been a team that have been very unexpected this year, and that you never know when they're going to quite turn up and win games of footy. So, Against Hawthorn, you're always in the dark because they have beaten some really quality opponents. The likes of Brisbane, Geelong, Port Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval, and they've beaten a few other quality opponents as well. So Hawthorn have done a really good job to get some really good wins against some really good sides, but they've lost to some really poor sides as well. Have Hawthorn says there's the upside but the downside. So really with Hawthorn, you never know. They're a bit of a guessing game each week. As to Richmond, they're going to be a real threat come finals time. If they end up making, which they should end up making, the finals. And I think in this game, Richmond will just flex their muscles and will just be too strong over Hawthorn. I think they'll win this game comfortably by 27 points to pretty much seal the deal. Well, yeah, they'll seal the deal there in finals. So now to the second Sunday afternoon game, the Sunday Channel 7 game at the SCG between Sydney versus Collingwood. Game of the round for me. I think this game's going to be really good. Can Collingwood win 12 games in a row? They just find a way to keep on winning. I don't know how they do, but they just find a way to just keep on winning in every single game. I don't know how they do it, but they do. And then Sydney, they've been in exceptional form as well and are giving the top four a real good run. About 5 or 6 weeks ago, it looked like they were going to make an elimination final, but with their good run home that's really favoured them, they are now a chance to parachute into the top four and even the top two to have a home qualifying final at the SCG, which would be scenes for them. But this game, I think, is really going to determine who perhaps could be getting that home qualifying final. This is a real interesting top four matchup, and I think now this is an upset for me because it's at the SCG, but I have tipped Collingwood. I think most of you guys probably would have ended up tipping Sydney, but I ended up tipping Collingwood just because I feel like they'll do it. They will win 12 games in a row. The saying that I just said, they always find a way to keep on winning. They always do find a way just to keep on winning. They always find a way to win. And in this game, they'll do exactly that. They will find a way to win, and they will win by 5 points. I think, game of the round, though, I think this is going to be a really good game on Sunday afternoon. So now to the final game, the Sunday twilight game between Essendon and Port Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. Now, it isn't going to be the greatest matchup because it's not going to be affecting finals, but it is still going to be a good game of footy regardless. Essendon 14th on the ladder, Port Adelaide at 12th. I think this game could really go either way. Both sides were extremely disappointing last week. Essendon had a very poor loss to the Giants and Port Adelaide had a very poor loss to Richmond. So both teams last week were pretty poor. I don't really need to go on too much more. Port Adelaide, they got smashed by Richmond. They didn't really even try. And Essendon, again, pretty much same for them. They just weren't their best selves last week. And I think that Essendon will bounce back at Marvel and will get the win just because it's at Marvel. Had it been any other ground, probably would have tipped Port Adelaide. So now we're going to go ahead, have a little look at the tips that I tipped against. St Kilda are 9th on the ladder, Brisbane are 5th. I ended up tipping Brisbane. The Doggies are 10th on the ladder, the Giants are 16th. I tipped the Doggies. The Crows are 15th on the ladder, the Roos are 18th on the ladder. I tipped the Crows. The Suns are 11th on the ladder, the Cats are 1st on the ladder. I tipped the Cats. The Demons are 3rd on the ladder, the Blues are 7th on the ladder. I tipped the Demons. The Dockers are 6th on the ladder. The Eagles are 17th on the ladder. I tipped the Dockers. The Tigers are 8th on the ladder. The Hawks are 13th on the ladder. I tipped the Tigers. The Swans are 4th on the ladder. The Pies are 2nd on the ladder. I tipped Collingwood and Essendon 14th on the ladder. Port Adelaide are 12th on the ladder. I tipped Essendon. Tips again, Brisbane, Western Bulldogs, Adelaide, Geelong, Melbourne, Fremantle, Richmond, Collingwood, and Essendon. So now the games to watch. I know that you guys do like this, actually, this part. So the games to watch, I would go, the first game is going to be Melbourne and Carlton. Might not be the most exciting game, but I still think it's going to be really big on how this top 4, top 8 will be playing out. Second game, Sydney versus Collingwood. I think it's going to be a great game. And then third game will be St Kilda versus Brisbane. And fourth game, now, I think, just going to truck it in there, Essendon, Port Adelaide. Or, you know what? Yeah, I'll go Essendon, Port Adelaide. Or Richmond, Hawthorn. I think the Sunday footy is going to be really exciting. I think every game this round is going to be a good one. Got a really big round of footy coming up. The ladder as it currently stands before my predicted ladder. So the ladder as it currently stands, the Cats, 64 points, a game clear of the Pies on 60 points, who are a game clear of the Demons, the Swans, and the Lions, all on 56 points. The Dockers sit in 6th spot on 54 44 points. The Blues are on 48 points. The Tigers are on 46 points. The Saints are on 44 points. And the Doggies are on 40 points. Now, round 23, we'll have a little look at this blockbuster round. Brisbane versus Melbourne will, for me, decide who will get a double chance. The Dockers, they are going to be cutting things late, but will have to win against the Eagles and the Giants if they want to get a top 4 spot, and they might not get a top 4 spot. The Suns play North Melbourne before the Cats take on the Eagles, which should lock away their minor premiership. The Bombers take on the Tigers on the Saturday night game. Should be an interesting one. The Bombers are capable of the upset, but last week versus GWS did not prove it at all. Richmond, going to be interesting to see how they go. Port Adelaide versus Adelaide should be a good showdown on the Saturday night. Hawthorn versus Dogs will decide whether the Dogs make the finals or not, depending on their result against the Giants. Because if they lose, that season over for them. Blues and Pies, I think that will determine whether Carlton make the top 8 and whether Collingwood make the top 4. And St Kilda versus Sydney, big for whether Sydney make the top 4. And if St Kilda do get a win over Brisbane, whether St Kilda will make the top 8. So I think there's some big games coming up round 23, my ladder time. So here's my ladder. I have the Cats on top of the table. Game clear the Pies, a game clear of the Demons and the Lions. And then I have the Dockers rising up to 5th because Sydney will slip down to 6th because of their loss to Collingwood. Then in 7th I have Richmond, who jump skip Carlton, who are still not safe. I have the Western Bulldogs in 9th, who can still overtake Carlton. I have St Kilda slipping below 100%. I have Gold Coast on 9 and 12, and then I have Port Adelaide, Hawthorn, Essendon and Adelaide all being on 8 and 13. So there is options that some of these teams, Port Adelaide and Adelaide, will be clashing in round 23, could decide how the bottom 4 even shapes up. Because if this still goes my way, if this ladder goes my way, there could still be a spot for the bottom 4 up for grabs for Port Adelaide, Hawthorn or Essendon. Who knows? Or maybe Adelaide might take it out, depending on the showdown. I think it's going to be a big game. And then Giants 16th, West Coast 17th, North 18th. But it's going to be a massive round 22 coming up. Now, this one is dragged. This round preview is dragged out. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. So then you guys will never miss another video on the channel. Thank you guys all so much for watching. So bye everyone. Flaming Footy out.